everybody, Joe Rexrode, Tennessean sports columnist here in Atlanta with John Adams, Knoxville News Sentinel sports columnist, Adam Sparks, our Vanderbilt beat writer. This is the site of SEC Media Days. It's the first time that it's in Atlanta. I think the first time since 1985 that it isn't in Hoover, Alabama, suburb of Birmingham. So we're going to talk about a few things today. First of all, I guess for both of you guys, what do you think about the event being here? Any big difference?
You see the short sleeves? See, if anybody knows, you ever did the one at Hoover, which we all know, it's usually about 50 degrees in the indoors. Here it was much better. Coffee was good, so I give this one a B+, where Hoover was a little lower than that.
Wow, okay. John?
I don't remember the escalator not working in Birmingham, so you count off for that. And man, I've got a bad sense of direction and just trying to get around this place. I was in the wrong building. I never went to the wrong building in Birmingham. I was in the wrong building here. The Media Hotel, as you know, is the Omni, but this is the College Football Hall of Fame where they're doing the interviews.
And I was right there with you, so
yeah.
We're both directionally challenged.
I was in the correct hotel, so I had no issues.
Good job. So they are going to move it around, by the way. Some news today from Greg Sankey. I'm guessing it'll probably be in Nashville at some point. They are going to be in Hoover next year. It'll probably become a little bit more of a rotating event, reward different cities in the league. Today, for both of you, start with you, John, the big news of the day or anything that jumps out at you from today. I know you're writing about Jimbo Fisher, but anything else that really struck you today?
Well, that Orgeron still sounds hoarse, but that's been going on for a while. No, I was impressed with Jimbo Fisher. This guy, you know, he's been around. He's won a national championship. He really seemed comfortable up there, just touching all the bases, outlining his program. I thought it was a nice presentation for a guy coming in the league, and as some know, coming back to the league because he was an assistant. I'd forgotten how long he was an assistant. He was an assistant for like 6 or 7 years at both Auburn and LSU. So this guy knows the league. I think this is a great day for Texas A&M. I think it has the kind of coach that can win a national championship.
Well, and he got some tough questions about leaving there and things like that and things he said. And I thought he handled it pretty well. You're writing about Tennessee. Would Tennessee ever do a deal to that magnitude, I guess?
And not only would it, could it? I mean,
not now.
Well, I mean, if Tennessee offered Jimbo Fisher $75 million for 10 years, he probably says, "Hey, thanks, guys, but I'll stay where I am."
Which is interesting. It's not like Texas A&M's won a national title in the last century, but it's still
more stable administration. And man, if you're Texas A&M, if you could just recruit Houston, if you could just get the best players out of the Houston Metroplex every year, you got it.
Yeah, you're in good shape. How about you, Adam? Anything today that really stood out to you? We had Greg Sankey, we had Coach O, Jimbo, Stoops.
Well, I got a lot of reaction on Twitter about a question I had asked to Greg Sankey during the opening remarks. There was a little tongue-in-cheek. You made one comment about it. My question was essentially the SEC revenue, which is the distribution revenue, which is about $41 million that each school gets. What's the conference's stance on how that money is spent? And he gave the right answer. We don't really tell schools how to spend it. But also, do they care if it's spent to the university rather than into the football program, facilities, all that? I think it was obvious who I was asking for.
Yeah, who would that be about? Who would you be referencing there?
Well, and you know, the theme around Vanderbilt for a while, for a long time, long before you and I, was that they would not spend money on football and facilities, and when large paydays would come in, which it does every year with the SEC, that money's going somewhere else. You're pulling in $40 million a year into the budget and doing very little, if anything, with facilities, then it's not going into football. And so that's why I asked that question. You know, the answer, I don't.
Yeah, like can you paraphrase the answer for me? I didn't really understand what he was saying, but
education matters, and we love it when schools put money into education. Blah blah. There's a lot of legalese in there, but
he lured you up there pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, but it's still the same thing with Vanderbilt, and that's why I wanted to ask him, because there's so much frustration around Vanderbilt is that nothing is ever going to happen, and there's not really a voice in terms of fans that can push Vanderbilt a little bit to spend the money on facilities. And I don't know necessarily where that's going to go. I don't buy into the building a new stadium. Not that I think that'd be a bad idea, but I don't think that's ever going to happen, it's not going to happen in the next decade or so. Maybe more of a facelift on the current one, or maybe something off campus, which that was nixed last year, but it could still come back again.
And a football building, I mean, certainly there are big needs there. But it's an interesting question because I always, like, we complain so much about the arms race in college sports. And so now we have a school that actually seems to have some priorities. But the problem is, if you're in the SEC, I mean, you know, you've got to compete, right? Try.
SEC priorities. I mean, they talk a good game about education, but they're putting it all, a lot of it, back into football. We mentioned Texas A&M earlier.
Yeah.
Look at those facilities over there. Look at that stadium. My gosh.
Yeah.
You could put a couple of Vanderbilt stadiums in that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting discussion with Vanderbilt. Also today I wrote a column that will change the minds of all Tennessee fans about USA Today's Dan Wolken. I think he's now their favorite sports writer, so you can check that out at pnas-nacaa.com, govallsextra.com. Anything else, guys, from today that we need to get into?
One thing I thought Ed Orgeron, LSU's coach, was doing a lot of spinning today. This is a guy who could get on the hot seat really fast this season. He talked about how good his recruiting class was going for 2019, and he talked about Steve Ensminger, his new offensive coordinator, who's been around. And
it's about running the spread all over the place now.
Yeah, and he's not Steve Ensminger doesn't really have that rep anymore. It's kind of like you think of his best days being behind him now, and he's really trying to sell that hire. Don't guess he has much choice. He made it. He's got to live with it.
Yeah, Adam?
Well, and one thing that stuck out to me with Kentucky, their appearance.
We got to talk about Kentucky for a minute, right?
I mean, between Mark Stoops and I talked to Benny Snell quite a bit, Blake Topmeyer, a colleague, he also talked to Benny Snell a little bit about Tennessee. It really seems like the chest was puffed out a little bit with Kentucky. I get the sense that they think they're going to be pretty good. I know everybody's supposed to come here and say that, but you can see doubt a lot of times in some of the schools that don't really believe that. I think Kentucky believes that. Benny Snell came up and said what he needs to say. He said, I'm the best running back in the SEC. And so I just got a sense of this confidence. And Georgia's at the top of the East, and everybody knows it. But who is after that? I don't know that Tennessee's ready for that. South Carolina, maybe. I think Kentucky feels like they've got a run at that. And Florida, okay, they have Dan Mullen, but Florida's not going to be Florida in a year. And so I think Kentucky maybe sees an opening in there where they can move up more toward the top of the East, and I think they were showing that today.
Yeah, it's a very predictable league at the top this year in both divisions, which hasn't really happened for a while, but I don't know. I'll be shocked if it's not Bama, Georgia in Atlanta. So tomorrow you've got it for me. Thank you. You got Steve Shaw, coordinator of officials. You've got Kirby. So we'll see if we can get some lobby crazies here with Kirby Smart here. It's not quite like Hoover with the Bama Auburn fans. Who else you got? You got Ole Miss Matt Luke, Chad Morris. You got some new coaches, and then Dan Mullen, Mississippi State to Florida. So maybe a little bit more interesting of a day tomorrow.
I think with Georgia right now, that's a hot program. They've just had a couple of commitments in recruiting, so there'll be a few people barking in the lobby here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So thanks for watching. We've got tons of coverage, of course, at govallsextra.com and pnas-nacaa.com, and we'll be back tomorrow.